Now, Tesco has joined Aldi, Asda and Morrisons in rationing the amount of peppers, tomatoes and cucumbers that customers can buy. The disruption to fresh produce is expected to last a few weeks due to extreme weather in southern Spain and North Africa, which has affected harvests. Well, we discussed the situation with the farming commentator Claire Taylor and Andrew Lloyd from the agricultural technology company Intelligent Growth Solutions. So, Claire, Tesco's are limiting how many cucumbers, peppers and tomatoes shoppers can buy. And in other places, it's broccoli, raspberries and cauliflowers. So clearly the situation is getting quite serious. Is it all because of the bad weather in places like Spain?
So I think what we're seeing in the media right now is that there are places like Spain who we're heavily dependent on for things like tomatoes at this time of year, and in parts of North Africa like Tunisia and Morocco. So right now they have experienced a real cold spell, some issues around the weather, and it's disrupting supply and getting these products over here. And what it's really done, it's shone a real light on the fact that actually we don't have domestic resilience when it comes to our own food supply chains here in the UK. And I think it's never good to be having shortages on the supermarket shelves, but what it does, it presents an opportunity to have a conversation around food and what are the risks that are involved with the production of that food, and risks such as the weather. And we're going to see that with climate change. We're going to see droughts, more droughts. We're going to see issues of disease resistance of crops. So we need to really think about, should we be relying on imports or should we really be strengthening what we can produce in this country?
And we can come back to the idea of domestic resilience in a minute, but Andrew, apparently Spanish supermarket shelves are not empty. Is there an element of Brexit involved here as well?
Well, clearly it's a complex problem, but undoubtedly, Aldi is one of the supermarkets in the UK who is restricting, as you've already noted, tomatoes, peppers and cucumbers today to consumers. Aldi in Germany, Aldi in Spain has not the same restriction at all. So Brexit clearly is a component. As Claire's already touched on, climate change and freak weather events also are a component, as indeed is government policy and regrettably the war in Ukraine, what that's done to gas prices, and as a result of the price of gas, greenhouses across Europe, including some in the UK, are no longer growing food simply because it costs too much to heat the greenhouses.
And apparently in the winter months, UK imports 95% of tomatoes, 90% of lettuces. I mean, we are so reliant on imports, aren't we, Claire?
Yeah, and it's interesting because before Christmas, traditionally people might have been thinking about greenhouses for tomato production. But as Andrew just mentioned there, the cost to actually have the electricity in some of these means of producing this food, it's too expensive. Farmers can't do that. And yes, right now we're importing products at this time of year. We've been doing that for a long time. But actually, these shortages, we're going to see them in the months to come because farmers currently, they can't absorb the costs of energy, of fertiliser. So what they've done in response is they're actually planting less produce, which means we're going to see later down the line when we sort of get into the harvest season, we're going to see less produce from our own domestic sources too.
And Andrew, that is a real problem then, if we're going to have problems with importing produce in the future and UK growers can't compensate for that.
Well, thankfully UK growers can compensate, they just need to adapt. So at IGS, we are the world's leading provider of vertical farm infrastructure technology. One of our customers had actually just opened in England, a company called One Farm. They are growing those lettuces, fresh leafy greens, and supplying UK supermarkets with those to replace the imports, as you say, that are at the end of those stretched supply chains. And when those supply chains break down, the supermarket shelves are empty. We also, the other half of our customers, use the vertical farming technology to grow starter plants that are then planted out into fields, polytunnels and greenhouses. The objective there is not only to, again, reduce the dependence on imports of these starter plants, but also the challenge is, can we increase the number of actual harvests within the growing year, whether that's in the open field or in the glass house,
But I was going to say, could this kind of technology mass produce the fruit and vegetables that we need? Or is it technology still in its infancy?
IGS is one of the few providers who actually grows at industrial scale. We sell our technology to farmers. Our towers come in 3 height varieties, 6, 9 and 12 metres high. A 12-metre high tower can produce over 30 tonnes of crops every year. The largest of these farms are planned to be several tens, if not hundreds, of these towers. And that begins to make a scratch in the dent of the problem of how we solve the food insecurity challenge.
I mean, that's fascinating what technology can achieve, because also you wouldn't need huge amounts of land for that either, or even soil, you were both mentioning earlier.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting what Andrew's saying, because to make sure that we can increase the uptake of this technology, does that mean that we should maybe have, the government right now is looking at future agricultural policy? Should we be investing in something like our vertical farming system so we can reduce our dependency on imports and producing more of this food here? Because our leafy greens and our tomatoes, it would be wonderful if we were growing them here and we didn't have to import them over there. But I think there is an element here also about seasonality. And I think as consumers, we've become so used to expecting in our porridge in the morning to have blueberries in January. And because of that, we've ignored the natural seasonality of food. And I think as part of that, we've also devalued food. We take it for granted that it's always there. We waste it. We waste around a third of the food we put in our in our shopping baskets. And actually, there's also an element here for food price. But actually, if we valued what went into the production of that food, we'd respect it more.
Andrew, do you think we should be thinking about eating more seasonally, the way we used to?
Certainly that's an element of it. I will confess I had blueberries on my muesli this morning and they came from Chile. That is ultimately unsustainable. So Claire is absolutely correct. We really have two choices. We either need to adapt to seasonal eating or come up with novel methods within which we can grow food out of season indoors and grow within the UK some crops that frankly have never been grown here, that have always therefore been imported. So our farmers tend to use the vertical farm to grow starter plants in the spring, so that after the last frost they get planted out into the field or the polytunnel. In the summertime, grow things that we still import, and in the wintertime, again, by all means, let's use the full capacity of the vertical farms to grow from seed to harvest indoors.
I mean, it just sounds like such interesting technology. Thank you very much indeed for telling us all about it. We'll have to leave it there, but Andrew and Claire, thanks very much indeed for joining us this evening.